The Auburn Tigers pick up another dub. It wasn't pretty, but they keep on rolling.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first or second or third listen every single day, depending on how many shows we do that day. And joining me live from Neville Arena, it is the Daryl Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend, recapping Auburn's 82-70 win over Georgia. 12-point wins, you always take them. But, man, that didn't feel like a 12-point win until, like, the last 2 minutes of the basketball game.
Yeah, very deceiving 12-point win. I'm just going to say it. Auburn did not play like the number one team in the country for, I would say, until about there was 5 or 6 minutes left to go in the game. Then they got some separation. They allowed their defense in the first half to carry them. And in the second half, they got it going a little bit offensively. But, Zach, I'm going to tell you right now, the tussle at midcourt, the little, scrum that happened woke Auburn up. I tweeted about it. It's like Georgia woke a sleeping giant at that point. Auburn played at a completely different intensity level after Georgia did that, and they had those 4 technical fouls. It really kind of locked Auburn in at that point.
And how many times have we begged, okay, like we need somebody to step up on offense. You're not shooting that great from deep. Run the offense through Johni Broome. And, oh, my goodness, they did that. Johni Broome, who should be National Player of the Year, 31 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists in 36 minutes today. I mean, truly elite stuff from Johni Broome. And, the stuff that doesn't show up in the stat sheet, like just taking over a basketball game. Like, he was unstoppable for that 5 to 8 minute stretch there in the second half, and that's what won Auburn this basketball game.
Yeah, I felt early on when he scored like a quick 6 or 8 points, I even tweeted out he can get whatever he wants inside. He hit a couple threes. His mid-range game was good. He dunked. He was very active, tipping the ball to himself on rebounds with the left hand and the offhand. They did need to run the offense through him because guys like Tahad and Chaney Johnson were struggling. I mean, they were absolutely struggling tonight. Chad Baker-Mazara had some moments. But thank goodness for Johni. And, he didn't get to play against Georgia the first game, and he more than made up for it tonight. It absolutely – this was, I think, one of his top 2 or 3 games of the year. And without Johni tonight, I don't know if Auburn wins that game. And that says a lot, especially when Auburn was able to win in Athens without him.
Yeah, especially with Chaney Johnson. It seemed like he, stepped on the floor and they gave him 4 personal fouls. I mean, he played – 11 minutes for Chaney tonight. I mean, I can't imagine if they wouldn't have had Johni, what they would have done in that situation.
Chaney Johnson, I love the kid. I think he's such a great player for Auburn as far as an integral piece, but he's got to get smarter on the defensive end, Zach. He fouls 60, 70 feet away from the basket in the backcourt, and it's ticky-tack stuff. I don't mind him fouling somebody that's going to the rack and making sure that you foul him hard enough that he doesn't make the shot, but you don't foul a guard in the backcourt. And that was his 3rd foul. So just basketball IQ a little bit smarter. And he knows it. He said it in a press conference earlier in the year. He says, I got to be smarter defensively.
And it's an effort thing. I mean, it's just him wanting to contribute, so bad. But there's that fine line that he hasn't quite mastered yet. I think Dylan's in the same boat, by the way.
He is. I think that Auburn was a little bit sloppy with the basketball tonight, too, again. Some really lackadaisical passes, some passes that were just not made at the top of the key that you need to make, a little bit soft. You texted me at one point and said sloppy, and that was the epitome of that possession. Thankfully, Georgia –
game,
at one point in the second half, Zach, Georgia had more made free throws than they did field goals. They had more made free throws, so – luckily for Auburn, Georgia didn't shoot the basketball very well early on. They got hot in the last 5 or 6 minutes.
They made 19 free throws, Georgia did, and they only made 22 field goals.
Yeah, but they started getting hot late, hitting shots. Newell got hot. Kane got hot. They started playing a lot better in the last quarter of the game, meaning the last 10 minutes of the second half. They started really playing better as far as shooting the basketball.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they did anything defensively that caused Auburn problems, but I will tell you, Zach, Auburn did not have good movement on offense. They didn't cut without the ball. They didn't whip it around the perimeter. They looked very stagnant, standing around a lot.
Yeah, the TV broadcast gave Georgia a lot of credit for their zone, and a lot of teams apparently haven't run zone against Auburn this year, and so they were crediting that pretty often. Daryl, to me, I think a lot of the lack of offense, especially in the first half, second half, Auburn scored 53 points. I know free throws and stuff were a part of that, but I don't think they were a major part of that. But I think a lot of the slowness and sluggishness and sloppiness on offense, I don't want to take too much credit away from Georgia because I think Georgia's a solid team. I don't think they're a great team. I think they're a solid team. I think a lot of it, though, was self-inflicted. I think it was Auburn shooting itself in the foot.
Yeah, Georgia is the type of team that you just feel like has a lot of it's a snowballing effect. I really thought when conference play started that they were going to be the surprise of the league, that Mike White, and they did pretty good early on, and then once you start losing, it becomes infectious. And now they're finding ways to lose. They cannot find ways to win late. I said in our pregame that you and I did our short that I thought Arkansas was a better basketball team than Georgia. Georgia was a little undermanned tonight without Tyron Lawrence. I think he helps. But Newell really stepped up. DeLay stepped up. Kane hit some shots. So
Newell impressed me tonight.
Well, yeah, and he'll go to the league. He'll be a lottery pick, which is good.
Go away.
Get out of here. He's a little mouthy. He's a little mouthy. I'm going to tell you what, Broome took it as a personal challenge to play against him because Newell early on was really talking noise to Broome and every time down the floor getting in his face a little bit, saying stuff. So I think that really, it incited Johni Broome and he went off.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind seeing more of that side of Johni Broome. Like we see him talk a lot and, he shows his emotion like when he's unhappy with things, but I wouldn't mind seeing him get ticked off a little bit more. Take a little bit of pride in some stuff. Not that he doesn't, but I do think we saw it at a higher degree than what we normally do tonight. Saying, hey, you're a freshman. You're a freshman. I'm better than you. And then just proving it over and over and over and over again. I don't know if we always see that from him. And I love that we saw it tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something else. He gets very intense as far as where he's supposed to be on the floor. And if people don't get him the ball, he's letting his teammates know. And I think at one point it was very obvious, Zach, Newell hit a three and gave him the 3 sign, did this number right here in his face. Yep. And Broome sprinted down the floor, looked at Denver Jones and said, give me the ball. And he spun around Newell and dunked. And that was a really big transition. Something else I was kind of charting. I had a little chart sheet. Auburn was 90% tonight scoring out of timeouts, media timeouts, dead ball timeouts called by Georgia or Auburn. When Auburn ran a set play out of a timeout, I think they scored 90% of the time. They really ran some good stuff out of their timeouts, and that's kind of a Bruce Pearl trademark, but they needed every single bit of that tonight too.
No question. I mean, especially when there's so many stoppages in games like this. Yeah, and that's another thing I said in the broadcast. Auburn's in the 97th percentile in out of bounds plays when it comes to scoring off of those. So 100%. All right, live chat. Drop in the live chat who your player of the game was, and if you want to add a caveat other than Johni Broome, I think that would be good because I think we're all going to agree how special Johni was tonight. And also, Auburn's got 4 games left? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4 games left in the regular season. What do you think Auburn's record will be over those 4 games? We'll discuss all of that and more next right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sports book. And right now, Daryl, you can, if you win your first $5 bet, you get $150 in bonus bets, which, I mean, come on. Right in time for March Madness and the NCAA tournament. Let's get ready to go. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Auburn right now plus 330 when you look at the odds for them to win the national championship. And it's a two-man race for the National Player of the Year. Johni Broome at plus 140. If you think he gets it, right now is the time to get on that. Cooper Flagg currently the favorite over at Duke. So right now, new customers can bet $150, or you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your stop right after the Auburn basketball game. Of course, Daryl and I go live after every single Auburn basketball game. Daryl joining us from Neville. So if you hear that, what you hear from Daryl, that's what's happening in the stadium right now. Of course, everybody's saying Johni Broome, but I love the shout outs for Denver Jones as well. I seem like Denver Jones had a few nice shots and like kind of a quiet 17 points tonight. I think if it's not Johni, which it is Johni, but the number 2 guy, I do think should be Denver Jones.
Auburn got separation and started to pull away when Denver Jones came back in the game because remember, he got his 4th foul on that quadruple technical.
Right.
He got his 4th foul when then Pettiford had to play a stretch. When he came back in the game, Auburn's lead went from 6 to 10 and stayed that way, and they ended up winning by 12. So he had what I consider to be the shot of the game. Georgia had cut it to 6. Auburn got a tap out on an offensive rebound on a missed shot, and in the lane, Denver Jones switched hands, went left-hand runner, and scored and got it back to 8. And I felt like that was kind of a dagger, but the fact he did it with his left hand, and of course, you put him at the free throw line, it's over. He is so clutch from the free throw line. I thought he guarded really, really good tonight. They had him on delay, and he picked up some fouls, some reaching fouls. I don't know. I mean, the game was called a Don Daly game. I talked about it. You know, I'm surprised we're not sitting in Sunday school right now. The game's just getting over. I mean,
I saw your tweet. I was like, goodness gracious. Yeah, we got church in the morning. I hope this game's over.
2 hours, 33 minutes. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
But
ridiculous.
And then he went to the monitor. He went to the monitor more times than Ron Burgundy. I mean, he did. He kept going and going to the monitor. Oh, this guy swatted at the ball. Did he catch the guy in the face? Let me look. I mean, it was awful how many times he went to the monitor. And, that just extends the game. I don't know. Something needs to be done about it. I need to get off my soapbox, but no one wants to watch a 2-hour, 33-minute basketball game. It's ridiculous.
No, the coaches don't want to coach in that. The players don't want to play in that. The fans don't want to watch that. I don't know why this is becoming a thing across. It's not just SEC. I mean, we're all talking about the SEC, but it's a college basketball problem.
Absolutely.
So they've got to figure that out. They have to figure it out. It's a problem. It's certainly a problem. When you look at the last 4 games remaining on Auburn's schedule, which if you would have told me going into conference play that Auburn would be at this point with 1 conference loss, I would have said you were crazy. So Auburn hosts Ole Miss on Wednesday. Next Saturday, they go to Lexington, then a quick turnaround and go to College Station that following Tuesday. And then they get an extra day's rest when they host Alabama that final Saturday of the regular season. I think Auburn goes 4-0. Daryl.
Yeah, I'm booging. I've changed my predictions, and I keep predicting a loss. A&M got beat by Tennessee at home today. I think Vanderbilt and Ole Miss were in a really tight game. I don't know how that ended up, but I like Auburn at home against Ole Miss. Kentucky has been Jekyll and Hyde. They've actually played better on the road than they have at Rupp, and Auburn gets them at Rupp, and then you get
that sounds
Alabama.
like another team.
Exactly.
Played better on the road than at home this year.
Well, there's a
Auburn
couple.
Tigers.
Yes, yeah. And so, yeah, I'm saying they're going to win out. I'm predicting it.
Yeah. If I think the likelihood of loss in order is at A&M, Bama at home, at Kentucky, Ole Miss at home. That would be my order.
I'd put Kentucky and A&M above Alabama right now.
Okay.
Do we have a score? I mean, I'm just curious. I can't access anything here. Do we know what the Vanderbilt Ole Miss score ended up? Just because that's our next opponent. So
yeah,
I wanted to see.
It
was a dogfight.
I'm sure. I mean, Vandy's a good team. I think Vandy's kind of underrated in all of this. For what it's worth, it's halftime. LSU's up on Florida.
Ooh,
by 6.
That would be
crazy.
Tremendous.
That'd be crazy. Vandy beat Ole Miss 77-72.
Wow. So Ole Miss is going to come in here licking their wounds a little bit. Interesting. So
yeah, I mean, this is kind of a not as extreme version of what Ole Miss did last year.
Right.
I think last year they came into conference play undefeated, and then reality hit them in the face pretty quick.
We hit them in the Auburn hit them in the face. Auburn brought them back to reality in Oxford. Remember, Ole Miss got up big. The crowd was going crazy. They had the kid that had the towel, was waving the towel and all that, and then all of a sudden, in the second half, Auburn absolutely took their manhood, and Ole Miss never recovered.
If you're not careful, for sure. So we'll see. We'll certainly see what happens with that. But I mean, an eventful day. It could be even more eventful in the SEC, depending on the two games that are happening as we do this live, with Florida down to LSU, and then Alabama's up 1 against Kentucky with a few minutes left to go in the first half. There's one thing I want to talk about, and then
Alabama's up 1. You said on Kentucky.
Yeah, with like 5 minutes left.
Wow, they were down 11 early, so they've been a nice little run.
Yeah. So there's so many folks, and y'all chat in here in the live chat before we go live, which I think is super cool, and I try to chime in when I can, and just kind of following Auburn fans on Twitter, and then just the general mood after we've gone live of a lot of people saying like, "Oh my goodness, we're not playing like the number 1 team in the country," which I agree. Like tonight, we did not play like the number 1 team in the country, but we won. But holistically, just like this frustration of these last few weeks, we've looked terrible, and I'm like, hold on. Like, I understand that expectations of what we want to see from this basketball team have changed and have elevated, and I don't think it's a bad thing. But I do think we need to be realistic. In the conference this year, you can't beat every team by 20 points. You just can't. No one else is doing it, and no one else is doing it in other conferences either that aren't as good. And so I want to make sure everybody understands what's happening, because you are watching a historically good basketball team, and a lot of you guys aren't appreciating it. And I don't want this to go 5 years from now and you're like, man, that team was so good, and not have been able to enjoy it while it was happening. Auburn played one of their worst games there. I'm going to mute you real quick because it's getting really loud in there. One of the worst games of the season was tonight against Georgia. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. And when some of our key scorers, like Tahad, had a brutal night or whatever, we all know that he's capable of more. But we beat a tournament team by 12, playing our worst game of the night. We had the same conversation, Daryl, when Auburn played Arkansas earlier this week. One of the worst performances of the season. And you were playing against an Arkansas team that was playing for everything. That game meant everything to them against a talented roster, not a great team, but a talented roster and a well-respected coach. And Auburn still took care of business against them in one of their worst performances of the season. And I just think proper perspective is needed in all of this.
Well, first of all, I came on saying that Auburn didn't play like the number 1 team in the country, but that's okay, because here's the deal. When you play almost 35, 36 games in a season, you're going to play like the number 1 team in the country if you're lucky, 15 of those. If you're lucky, okay? So the point is to say that Auburn's been playing poor. Okay, they lost to Florida, but they had good wins at Vandy, at Alabama, and at home against Oklahoma. Those were 3 good. They played well. They played good. They looked good. They looked like the number 1 team in the country against those 3 teams. They sucked against Florida, and they looked kind of average against Arkansas and Georgia, and won by 7 and by 12. Mm-hmm. In this league, you're right. And so, it's frustrating for fans because of the number that's next to their name. The expectation is extremely, Georgia's only won 4 conference games. Auburn should be blowing them out. Yeah, had Auburn played well in the first half at all, just average in the first half, this is a 20-point win.
Another thing, and there are folks saying yeah, we're appreciating it, but you need to play better on offense. We all agree Auburn is capable of better offense than what we've seen today, this week. Once again, we're all in agreement there. But I do think perspective is needed. Auburn scored 82 points tonight. Do you know what Georgia was averaging defensively as far as points allowed per game going into today?
I think they were in the low 70s.
68.
See that? So
they were.
So that tells me. Yeah, that tells me.
League in points allowed, and Auburn scored 82. So, like, hold on. Like,
yeah,
hold
that
on
answers my question, Zach, that I asked earlier to you on this broadcast. I said on this live, I said, was it what Georgia did? Are they that good defensively, or did all? And it seems to be that way. Georgia is a good defensive basketball team.
Yeah,
they gave them problems.
Georgia's a solid. I don't think they're good. I don't think they're great. Georgia is a solid basketball team that has held its own in arguably the best conference in college basketball history this season. Perspective and context is needed in all of this. So Auburn beat a solid team today. When you look at the rest of the conference, like you had that raw reaction of me telling you Vandy beat Ole Miss. Like, there are a lot of good teams that are going to lose basketball games today. And Auburn won by 12. They won by 12. And so once again, I just think we need to kind of celebrate this as it's happening, not just look back on it fondly.
I agree. I guess sometimes too, in the moment, in a vacuum, especially when you're here live and you watch some things happen, it's frustrating because you're like, oh, come on, Auburn, you're better than that. You're better than making that lazy pass. You're better than, jumping too early and missing the rebound. You're better than missing a layup going to the basket. But you know what? It happens to every team in the country. And despite that, Auburn's still winning. And so they figured it out in the second half. And again, I'm glad to know what that statistic was from Georgia, because I thought, man, Auburn just doesn't look right offensively. Is that something Georgia's doing, or is it self-inflicted? And I think that zone that you were talking about, I saw Auburn dribbling a lot at the top of the key, not running their stuff, and that's what a good zone will do, Zach.
Yeah.
It causes you to be a little stagnant.
So does that give Pearl coaching tape this week? You got to think so. You got to think so. And look, I guess there's two sides to every coin, because one of them you can say like, oh my goodness, Auburn's not playing its best basketball right now. And I say, great. Auburn hasn't peaked yet. I mean, think about all the stuff they've done over the last few weeks, not playing their best basketball. I think that's incredible.
Well, that's a great point, because they've done it in stretches. I do believe that there were a few games in the last 2 weeks, like the game against Alabama, especially the last 4 or 5 minutes was elite. But if you start to get guys healthy down the stretch, like in an SEC tournament scenario where you can get that double bye and you ain't got to play that first game and you get like 5-6 days off, that's going to be a big help. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you something else. If you think about it, what a zone is designed to do, going back to that zone thing, what a zone is designed to do is to keep you from scoring inside and make you beat them from the outside. With that zone, Broome got 31 points. So at some point, they were finding him on the right spot on the floor, because that's what a zone is designed to do, is to take away your inside game. Now, Cardwell got nothing but a dunk, and Chaney struggled. But Miles Kelly going to the basket again like he's been doing. He's doing a good job, Zach, cutting to the basket, taking to the ball. And again, I'll keep saying it. It's more impressive when you see it in person. He's a really good rebounder, backside rebounder for a guard. Yeah. He really is. And he helps kind of get them out in transition.
Yep. All right. So we'll see what happens with the rest of the day, and we'll talk about it on Monday's edition of the show. Daryl, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
Follow me on X, DAP6410, Instagram, Daryl Dapp. I'm with you on Wednesdays and Fridays. Sunday night, tomorrow night, we're going live with Kyle Rush. Me, you, and Kyle doing a little barn episode at 8. And then, of course, after every basketball game, we go live.
Yep, that's right. Hey, please like the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're listening on audio after the fact, please subscribe, whether you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, wherever it is, and please leave a review if you can. Helps the show out a ton, dropping those 5-star reviews. So we'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.